is, I mean, could you train a gorilla or a bear or
Well, yeah, a lot of people do. I worked with chimps, never trained one, but I had an orangutan that I trained. I had never done that before. That was really interesting. And a little story. I have a really nice picture of Michael Landon and I with my orangutan. I had gone to, a lot of times you take animals to a film set that aren't working, but they're in training when you're working something else. That way they get to see the lights, cameras, dollies, and all the confusion that a film set has. So we were working in Simi Valley, and where they had the town of Walnut Grove built, and I was parked quite a ways away, and I had Strawberry, which was the orangutan's name, and I was working her, and letting her see all the stuff and everything. And Michael came up to me and said, "Hey, can I see your orang?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I started working the orang and everything, and he says, "This is just a great person." He says, "I've got one more script to write for this season. I want to put the orang in it." I said, oh, "Okay, cool." And he called me up at Universal about 2 weeks later and said, "Can you come down and get the script?" And I went down. It was For the Love of Blanche was the name of it, and the orangutan is pretty much the whole show. And I was like, whoa. So I took like 2 weeks of doing nothing but training,
How does a orangutan fit into Little House on the Prairie?
It was a very interesting story. The Victor French, his character, was traveling back to Walnut Grove, and he meets up with an old guy in a covered wagon, and they build a fire together, and they're out somewhere, and then they have some food and everything, and the old guy is talking about Blanche. Well, Victor French he thinks this is a little girl, right?
Oh, yeah.
So in the morning, the old man has died. Oh. And he's like, "Oh, what am I going to do with this little girl?" And oh, man. And so he goes in there in the covered wagon to see this little girl, and she's covered up. And what it is when he's like, hello, are you in it? And the orangutan goes, and then of course he's like shocked. So he takes the orangutan back to Walnut Grove, which causes
I bet.
a shitstorm. I mean, he destroys his house, and I had the greatest time doing this. Michael said the scene is he's left alone, and he's going to destroy the house. And I said, okay, so I know what I'm going to do. I had him bring in like a big, not a book, kind of like a bookcase, but it's got all the, on the shelves are foods and flour and things like that. So what I did is in prepping, I took a little can and pulled the top off and put a bite of banana in there, put it in, and let her grab it. And she pulled it off right away and got the banana. And then I put it on another shelf, and she found that and did that. So when we went to do the scene, I put her up so she couldn't see what I was doing, and I hid something much further up. But I had all kinds of other things with flour and things and stuff, and I knew, and also a bottle that would look like whiskey, and it was I think it was juice or tea or something. And so I knew this was good, and sure enough, I let her go, when they're rolling. Oh, okay. And I didn't say anything, just let her go. And she goes over, the first thing she finds is this bottle, and she takes the cork, and then pours it in something, drops it, and she's climbing up, and she's pulling over things with flour in it, and it's all over, and it's just, and so after this scene, when they cut to Victor French coming home, and the orangutan is sitting there on the table with stuff all over, and the place is a mess,
And then there's a fight scene between Victor and the orangutan.
No, but I'll tell you what. And you guys know, you've been in the film business for a long time. You don't see, Michael Landon was executive producer, writer, director, and actor. And I mean, you know, that's a lot to do. He came to me, and you don't get this. He comes to me as a trainer and says, "Hey Brian, the show's running late or running short. So can you do something in Victor's bedroom, something kind of cool or fun or whatever?" So I went into that set, and there's the bed that Victor sleeps in, and another bed over here that the orangutan is going to be in. And in the middle was like a sawhorse with a saddle on it. So I started thinking, so I put the orangutan on the saddle, and I had her pick up the reins, and right away, you know, you show her something, and she's going to start messing with things. And if it's good, you're like, yeah, that's great. So what happens is in the scene, and I put all this together, and I showed Michael, and it was the orangutan gets out of bed in the middle of the night and gets up in the saddle, and he, you know, doing all this, and Victor French is like, "Blanche, be quiet and go to bed," you know, and he keeps doing it. And so, "No, go to bed." And the orangutan gets down, gets under the covers, pulls the cover over, and then he does the raspberry, and then Victor French does the raspberry, and then he does it back to him. And I showed that to Michael, and he loved it, and he put it in the show.
Sweet.